what is there to say about this game against the San Francisco 49ers? Calling it a bad game would be a complete understatement. Like it's not even in question. This team did not show up. This team was not prepared. And that's offensively, defensively. The only, I guess you could say, the plus for this game was Brandon Aubrey maybe at the kicker position. This game was just completely disappointing to see for a team that, again, prior to the season had so many high expectations, high hopes, just plans for much bigger. I don't even know where to start when it comes to this game. The Dallas Cowboys lose to the San Francisco 49ers with a final score of 42-10. This game was not even close. And saying it wasn't close, again, is another understatement. Dak Prescott, we're going to start there again. I'm not going to even go into it right now, but Dak Prescott, 14 of 24, 153 yards, 6.4 average, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. He was sacked 3 times, a quarterback rating of 46.4. It was not pretty because one thing you're going to look and say, we could not even establish a run game. Offensive line didn't show up. Prior to the game, this is apparently supposed to be the first week that the Dallas Cowboys are finally going to have their complete 5-man rotation, the proper starting O-lineman. And this team did not show up. They're completely getting blown off the ball. Dak Prescott didn't have much time to begin with. The running game was not anything to even sneeze at, just for the simple fact you couldn't even get anything established. Although we see one run earlier on in the game, Tony Pollard finds himself break off a nice little run. Fred Warner comes from behind, punches the ball loose. It becomes a fumble. The San Francisco 49ers recover the fumble. And, of course, more momentum to their side of the ball. This game is one of those that you don't want to say it's even a coaching type game where it's, there are lots of things to learn from. This is not even a game at the same time that you even want to burn the tape because there were so many things that you want these players to have to look at repeatedly and figure out where exactly did we go wrong. I'm going to say it for now. Total yards. Let's go into that. Total yards for the San Francisco 49ers, 421 to Dallas's 197. Of course, we lose the turnover battle. 4 turnovers for the Dallas Cowboys, only 1 for the San Francisco 49ers. Let's go to first downs. San Francisco has 25 first downs to the Dallas Cowboys 8. Time of possession, the San Francisco 49ers 37 minutes and 5 seconds to the Cowboys 22 minutes and 55 seconds. We are trying to figure out where exactly is this direction going to go for the offense. The Mike McCarthy Tex Coast offense, Brian Schottenheimer, Dak Prescott. All offseason, we heard that these guys put this whole system together. They had big plans for what exactly they were going to do. And again, we're going to keep a few things from the Kellen Moore era. And what it seemed to be now is this team doesn't even have any sense of identity. Is this a run team? Is this a team that you're going to be able to say, you know what? We are going to have to be more of a system where we're kind of just getting the balls in our playmakers' hands. CeeDee Lamb, to me, to this point of the season, I'm saying, going ahead into week 6 next week, CeeDee Lamb has not had any kind of impact on this season so far. He does have 1 touchdown, receiving touchdown catch this season, but there's nothing that he's shown. And I'm going to say I'm not even going to pull it fully on a guy like CeeDee Lamb because, again, if you're watching our system, there have been many times he's been open. And due to whether it's pressure, whether it's Dak Prescott feeling like he is kind of under duress, he's just not seeing the complete field right now and his progressions. CeeDee Lamb's not being able to make the impact that I believe a guy like him should be able to be making. We're talking about CeeDee Lamb yesterday against the San Francisco 49ers, 4 catches for 49 yards. Jake Ferguson, 3 catches, 28 yards. The only big play, I guess you could say, is a 26-yard touchdown catch by Kevontae Turpin downfield. And this is kind of one of those plays where you're thinking maybe this offense can open up a little bit more after this. Still nothing. Brandon Cooks, the major addition in the offseason that we believed at least. 1 catch for 7 yards. I don't know what Mike McCarthy is doing when it comes to this play calling, but I'm starting to see the issues that Packers fans were speaking about before. They do not at all have any sense of creativity. There's nothing going on that you're even feeling like the defense is back on their heels at any point. It's one of these games now where we're asking ourselves, was this even the proper hire? Because it's starting to look a little bit more like it might have been a bad idea. And I'm not even talking about keeping and hanging on to a guy like Kellen Moore, because although Kellen Moore did have a more explosive offense. That goes without saying. Kellen Moore's offense had its own issues because of the variance. And although we're getting big plays and you're scoring more touchdowns, obviously, and you get putting up way bigger yardage totals, there were just times where he didn't understand situational football. And those are the things that get you beat, because when you're playing against the better teams in the playoffs, we saw what happened in the last couple of years against this same San Francisco 49ers organization. But this game, it was just completely ugly. Tony Pollard, 8 carries, 29 yards, 3.6 average. Yesterday, you're kind of hearing a little bit throughout the game. Oh, the Cowboys missing an actual running back number one. Is Ezekiel Elliott maybe properly missed? Is there another guy that maybe Tony Pollard should be playing with and not him just being your sole feature back? Yesterday, it's one of those games where you can't even really tell who should get the major blame. There was so much bad to go around. That goes without saying. This defense did not show up. We're talking about Leighton Vander Esch did lead the team with 10 total tackles, 4 solo. Damone Clark had 9 total tackles. Donovan Wilson, 7 total tackles. This is one of those games where you were hoping and expecting a guy like Micah Parsons to be able to show himself and prove to be one of those dominant defensive players in not only just this conference's division, but the entire league. Micah Parsons was, saying quiet to me was an understatement. And although I do think there were some things that the San Francisco 49ers were doing to take him away from the game, because there was no one else showing that they were going to be making any impact. We're seeing lots of chips. We're seeing lots of double teams. We're seeing lots of just switching. What I feel Dan Quinn did wrong completely yesterday is he completely tried to go and show Micah Parsons' dominance against one of the best tackles in history of this league. We're talking about a Trent Williams. I felt that was going to be an issue, seeing it even early on in the game, Micah Parsons lining up against a guy like Trent Williams, because you're looking for mismatches. We know Micah Parsons can make plays against pretty much any outside tackle in this entire league. But at the same time, you want to limit you want to limit his I guess you want to say, excuse me, I'm looking for the word to describe it. Anything that can kind of deter his dominance. You want to keep him away from that as much as you can. This team now there's so many questions going into week 6. I'm going to say it now. I do believe the Cowboys are going to win again against the LA Chargers, potentially. Let's be clear. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I will say I do think the Cowboys are going to win that game like that. And again, all of a sudden, everybody's going to start to feel a little bit comfortable again. Now the Cowboys could possibly be sitting at a 4-2. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the Cowboys could be sitting at 4-2. Does that mean this team is right back where they need to be? No, because again, defense is starting to worry me a little bit more now, because we have now seen this 2 out of 5 weeks against the Cardinals. And now the 49ers, although a much better team, obviously, this is now starting to be where you're seeing some holes in this defense. It's not as tight and as solid as I once believed it could be. And that's going to be honestly in the way that a guy like Stephon Gilmore was not planning to be your number one corner. He was going to be your 1B type corner. Trayvon Diggs obviously was going to be your guy. And again, losing a guy like Trayvon Diggs, that takes so much out of this team. That takes so much out of what we're going to do. Now you're relying on guys solely, completely like Deron Bland, who were prior believed to be one of your guys, is going to be more in your nickel corner. He's going to be a guy you can move around a little bit. Now some of these guys like a Stephon Gilmore, they're being needed out of necessity and not just putting us over the top. So this team is just in disarray, because again, although we can still have a nice season, we can have a solid record by season's end. Now you're going to ask yourself, but is this team good enough to play against the best? Is this team good enough to be able to beat the best? Because we know that's what the postseason is all about, playing your best against the best. So the Dallas Cowboys, a complete annihilation yesterday. Again, San Francisco 49ers 42, Dallas Cowboys 10. We can get into it a little bit more, but there wasn't anything to really even take from this game in a positive outlook, because again, now there are just so many questions left, and we have a lot to, and I guess this coaching staff and just this whole team in general has to get back to the drawing board and figure out what exactly the next step is. Brock Purdy, 17 of 24, 252 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Looking at the same way that George Kittle had 3 catches, 67 yards, 3 touchdowns. This game, again, was just completely and utterly embarrassing. There was nothing to take away positively if you're going to look at a team that you believe to have been, prior to this game, of course,
a championship contender. This is one of those games. It was a perfect opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys to show that they do belong in those talks with teams like the Eagles, talks with like the San Francisco 49ers. But again, this was a complete letdown. Now, you're actually going to have to start asking yourself, up to this point, I have been I want to say a very big, but I will say a very solid rated. I've been a solid Dak Prescott supporter. Now, in year 8, you're starting to ask yourself, is this the guy for this team going into the future? I'm now starting to actually have doubts myself, and I'm not going to pile on him as if this is the end of the season, this is a playoff game. But saying right now, there are still some issues I've seen with Dak Prescott over the years. And one thing I will say, Dak Prescott plays his best when the game is like high energy, high up tempo, where you're not literally looking for him to have to process everything. Because one thing I've noticed over the years, Dak Prescott does seem to have issues when it comes to those, I guess, processing the way he processes the game. Let's look at it. More times than not, we could talk about the Brandon Cooks deep shot down the field that somehow turns into it also an interception. But one before then, he has Fred Warner beat the linebacker. He hit Dak Prescott. For me, it always seems to be he's 1 second late, 1 second behind. Whether there's a guy open, sometimes, especially when we're talking about the way they call this West Coast or Tex Coast type offense. Let's be clear before I get into that. Dak Prescott, again, according to Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer, all offseason training camp especially, it's been talked about. Dak Prescott had a big voice in creating this offense. He took some things that he did like from the Kellen Moore offense and also in adding into this West Coast offense that a guy like Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer are more comfortable with. Dak Prescott had a big hand and a big part in creating this offense. So I'm not going to be able to give him a pass when you had your hand in this mix also. So Dak Prescott, one of the issues I have seen, and again, it's like 1 second too late. A lot of times you'll see a guy maybe open a second prior. In the NFL, that split second is the difference between a turnover or a nice big play, or sometimes, again, a 3 and out. We see many times we come out there, high energy, and it's quick 1, 2, 3 out punts. We cannot continue to have this. I want this franchise to now actually have to sit down, take a deep look. Is Dak Prescott the guy for this team going into the future? Again, you want to keep yourself balanced because you can't get too high, you can't get too low. But these are questions that are going to have to be answered because at some point, we're going into now a year, of course, Dak Prescott, in my opinion, is obviously he's going to be back to me at least next year because again, that's if you let a guy like that go, that's $60 million in dead cap money that you can't even do anything with. You'd have to pretty much blow this team up to try to make another move. So this is going to be another situation where we're looking into. This is Dak Prescott's audition period because again, up to now, the franchise and the front office can say whatever they want to say. Dak Prescott does not have an extension in place right now. So you can't tell me that this franchise is guaranteed that Dak Prescott is the guy for the future until we see that name and the signature is on that dotted line. So you have a lot of questions to ask yourself. Honestly, and I'm going to say right now, I'm starting to see a lot of the issues also that Packers fans were speaking about when it comes to Mike McCarthy and his system in general. Mike McCarthy this offense we're running is just completely stale. Let's call it what it is. It's stale. There's nothing creative about it. You're not getting your playmakers in position to actually be able to make plays. And again, that does not only just go on Dak Prescott himself, that goes with the guy that beat his chest to take over these play calling duties. Kellen Moore, as again, you want to say as many issues as he had. Let's be clear. Defenses and D coordinators was telling you themselves. Kellen Moore's offense was very predictable because a lot of times, although we had lots of big plays, there were times where you can kind of figure out what exactly a guy like that is planning to do. Because again, you would see a lot of the same similar routes in the same areas, and that's going to be a problem. But one thing we can say, at least you felt like this offense had life. This offense under Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer, it is zero life in it at all. Completely lifeless. Again, we're talking about every play cannot be a check down. Every play cannot be a quick slant. Every play cannot be a quick out or a hitch route because one thing you're going to do is not stretch the field. We added a guy like Brandon Cooks from the Houston Texans. All offseason, we're talking about how big of a part of his offense he's going to be, how much he's going to help stretch the field, how much he's going to help just add in against just that extra deep threat. We have rarely seen that prior to yesterday. Yesterday, I guess, again, there were a couple of deep shots taken to a guy like Brandon Cooks, but that has not been anything that we would call a part of this offense. So I'm starting to question a lot. Mike McCarthy has got to get himself, again, let's be clear, I'm not even going to say he has to get himself back to some kind of sense of creativity, because again, at this point, once trends start to show themselves, we're going to have to start believing them. We can't make excuses for a guy like Mike McCarthy. He's been in this league for a long time, and I guess unsuccessfully, you're going to say. Of course he ends up with the Super Bowl ring but with Aaron Rodgers, but with the talent of a quarterback like that, they should have had at least more than one, just because that is a generational talent at quarterback. So now, a lot of these questions, like I said, Packers fans were throwing these things in the air just over the years. Of course, when that whole relationship, the Mike McCarthy era in Green Bay kind of came to an end, you start to hear just the noise. Offense, stale offense, no creativity, lack of creativity. And it's starting to rear its ugly head right now. So the Dallas Cowboys are going to have some hard questions, because I'm going to say right now, unless there's some type of miracle run, unless there's some type of just big change in the way that the things are going right now, the trajectory of this team, we're not looking like a championship contending team. We're looking like a team that can be kind of good or solidly good, pretty good during the regular season, a one and done, maybe a wild card type win. Because now you found yourself behind the gun, because although it doesn't matter, every single Eagles game has not been pretty. But one thing's for sure, they're 5-0. The 49ers completely dominated you yesterday. It was not even close. In no way, shape, or form was this a close game. So you can talk all you want to about that you feel like you're still a championship contending team, but you have to show it. One thing is now, like for sure, you now find yourself sitting behind a team like the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East, a 5-0 team. You're now sitting at 3-2. You have a big game against the LA Chargers and Kellen Moore coming up in week 6. So there are going to be no excuses. No one wants to hear exactly what your plans are for this team. It doesn't matter, because now you have to take it 1 week at a time. You have got to chip yourself back, try to get back into a race. You still have 2 games against the Philadelphia Eagles. So this NFC East rival, I guess you want to say this race against your NFC East rival, is far from over, but you have got to start to string together some sort of identity, because up to right now, we have not one sense of identity, because we're not a running team. We're not a passing team. We're a team where we're all about ball control. But what that's starting to do is show that if our defense is not playing perfectly, which yesterday was far from it. I'm not questioning Dan Quinn yet, but let's be clear. There have been a couple games now, again, once like I said, now we're looking at 2 games where there have not been pretty results. You're going to start to see, is this offense able to hold up their own? Because again, if it's not a perfect game from a defense, you can't mail it in and say, well, there goes the week. You have got to be able to make adjustments. Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy, all eyes are on you guys going into next week against the Chargers. No more excuses. I don't want to hear him for sure. I'm sure a lot of people that are much more angry than I am definitely don't want to hear him. So we are going to see exactly what this team is built of, what this team is made of. And we're talking about even guys like Micah Parsons. We're talking about some of your other horses and your dogs. They're going to have to show up. I don't want to hear any more talk from any of these guys for the rest of the season. You've got to put the work in. You've got to show that you are literally about everything you put in for it throughout the offseason, throughout training camp, because again, you only get one shot at this. When this season is over, you don't want to have any regrets. Hopefully this team can bounce back. Hopefully this team can put some things together over this next week and figure out where everything went wrong, what we can actually fix, and get back on track. I appreciate you guys for all the support. Again, this is an unfortunate week for the Dallas Cowboys, but the season will continue to roll on. I appreciate the support. Go ahead and drop your comments down below in the section. I want to know how you guys feel. Are you still feeling any sense of I guess you want to say I don't want to say excitement, but are you still feeling some confidence that this team can right their wrongs, I guess, get back on the right track? Or are you completely off of certain guys? Are you off of Dak Prescott? Are you off of Mike McCarthy? Are you off on this front office? Because we know at the end of the day, everything's going to run and stop and start with the pretty much the owner of this team. And also his son. We're talking about Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones. Everything starts and begins with them. So do you feel they have any plan for our future? Because we have lots of things to question right now. So I appreciate you guys once again for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, share. And as always, go Cowboys.